أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
يسألونك عن الشهر الحرام قتال فيه قل قتال فيه كبير وصد عن سبيل الله وكفر به والمسجد الحرام وإخراج أهله منه أكبر عند الله والفتنة أكبر من القتل ولا يزالون يقاتلونكم حتى يردوكم عن دين
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the merciful, the compassionate. All praises to Allah, the creator of the universes and their sustainer, the provider of believers and unbelievers. And may his choicest blessings be on the seal of his prophets, the last of his messengers and his holy progeny. And in particular, may his ever-ceasing blessings flow on that immediate successor to the holy prophet, on Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, sallallahu Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. Yesterday, we saw the situation in Medina as it was after the murder of Uthman, and the efforts that Imam Ali alayhi salam made, not only to ensure that Uthman was not murdered, but even after his murder, that he was safely buried. But the position immediately after burial was that the rebels, the incendiaries, took charge of the city. There was therefore commotion, there was disorder, there was tumultuousness in the city, riot spreading all over. The result was that there was complete breakdown of law and order. In that situation, the leaders of Medina, the elder statesmen of the city, of course, became greatly concerned. Their anxiety was that if law and order would not be restored, the city would remain in the hands of rebels who were armed. They therefore started to consider who should take over from Uthman. Names that came to mind straight away were Talha and Zubair. But majority of the elderly statesmen there, a vast majority of them, took the view that the man ideal to take charge in those circumstances was Imam Ali, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, Muhammad. And hence they approached him to take charge. And Imam Ali alayhi salam instantly refused, saying, I do not see that I want to be involved in the administration of this Khilafah. I will be willing and available to advise as I did in the case of the first and second Khalif, but I will not assume or accept charge of this Khilafah at all. When the statesmen saw this position, they reported the matter to the rebels. But the rebels were not satisfied. They said, it's not our problem to find who the Khalif is, but we will not leave this city until we know who that Khalif is, until we are satisfied that that is a Khalif with whom we would be able to trust, and until we see that bay'ah is made of that Khalif. Well, one could understand the situation after the experience they had with Uthman. But they realized that matters could drag on, just as the leaders of Medina were worried that the situation was incendiary. So were the rebels themselves concerned. Their concern was that they could not remain there for too long. There were 4 groups of people there, the rebels. There was the group from Egypt, there was the group from Persia, there was the group from Syria, and there was the group from Mesopotamia. They wanted to go back after all. At the same time, they did not want to leave the job half done. So, they gave an ultimatum to the leaders of Medina that unless we have a Khalif who will take charge within 24 hours, we will resolve this issue ourselves. The leaders of Medina claimed until then that the exclusive right to appoint a Khalif belonged to the Medinites. You saw that is how happened when Abu Bakr became Khalif, and that was one of the criticisms. You saw how Umar became Khalif. The Medinites, the consultative committee, consisted only of Medinites, indeed, the Muhajirun of the Medinites. So the Medinites found the situation extremely difficult, because now the position was that if they did not appoint a person as Khalif, the exclusive right which they thought they enjoyed of appointing a Khalif would be lost. In reality, it did get lost, because since Muawiyah took charge, there has never been consultation of the Medinites in any manner at all. It was might that continued to be right. They came back to Imam Ali alayhi salam therefore and said, we are not able to obtain support either for Talha or for Zubair, but we have overwhelming support, almost a consensus that you should take over. But Imam Ali alayhi salam was not ready to take over. He said, I will be prepared to assist in any manner possible, but Khilafah is not my obligation. You can sort this matter out yourself. Appoint whomsoever you want to. I will be there to advise, but I will not take reins. Then, when the rebels came to know this, they too approached Imam Ali alayhi salam. Indeed, the pressure on him was such that Imam Ali alayhi salam says, a situation was reached when there were so many people in my house that my children, Hasanain alayhim salam, were being trampled upon and my shoulders were being pulled. And ultimately, he said, if that is the situation, that there is no alternative for peace, law and order to be preserved in Medina, if indeed Islam is in jeopardy, because that is how it was put to him, particularly by the Medinites, that Islam is now in jeopardy. If you do not take over, we do not know what these rebels might do, what communications they might have with other religions, and how Islam might suffer in the end. So Imam Ali alayhi salam said, very well, if Islam will be in problem, then you can tell the rebels that I will be in the mosque tomorrow morning, and I will accept the Khilafah if there is enough people to make bay'ah. But, he added, should you still come across a person who you think until this evening capable of assuming office, I will be too pleased to see that he assumes office. I will advise him as I advised the first two. However, nobody was forthcoming. The next day, therefore, under this pressure, and I hope I will illustrate this in the words of the Imam himself from an authentic source. The next morning, therefore, he was, as promised, in Masjid al-Nabawi, and historians say he entered the mosque very simply attired in a simple white gown and a coarse wound turban. And when he was there and the people were there, he announced that I have information now that Talha and Zubair are both back. I'm saying this for a purpose which will become manifest, and you will see the importance of it we don't have a sitting tomorrow, but day after tomorrow, when we resume the next additional 5 sittings, those sittings, by the way, will start at 8:30 to provide you all more opportunity to attend with greater ease. That is the occasion when we will discuss the role of Talha and Zubair. Imam Ali alayhi salam, anticipating that problem, specifically called for them and asked them, do you wish to take the Khilafah? Do you wish to assume this office? Because if you wish to assume the office, I willingly say that you assume the office. I will be available to advise. Both of them declined. Both of them said, we do not see ourselves competent to take this office when you are amongst us. And we see that you are the fittest of us all to assume this office, being the brother of the Holy Prophet. It was in those circumstances that Imam Ali alayhi salam accepted the Khilafah. And once he accepted the Khilafah, he made a speech too. And in that speech he made it very clear. He said, you people have made it incumbent upon me to accept this office. Indeed, you have made it impossible for me to decline any longer. And it is only in these circumstances that I accept this office. But I wish to make it very clear that I will only conduct the office on the basis of the dictates in the Holy Quran, on the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet, and in accordance with my best judgment. In other words, he made it very clear that no Sunnah of the preceding 2 Khalifs would be binding on him. And from then onwards, multitudes of people made bay'ah to him. Most significantly, the rebels from all the 4 countries, almost unanimously by consensus, made bay'ah to him, and having made bay'ah to him, were prepared to leave. But there was a minority of very prominent people who did not make bay'ah. Of course, Talha and Zubair did, because they were offered the Khilafah and rejected it. But there was still a group of prominent people. People like Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas. These were governors who knew that the moment Hazrat Amir will assume office, their governorship will go. Because Imam Ali alayhi salam was in no position, spiritually, out of piety, to accept governorship of people who did not conduct their affairs in keeping with the rules of Islam. This was one of his problems with Muawiyah. And Muawiyah, of course, did not make bay'ah at that time or at any time. But we shall discuss that on Wednesday night, inshallah, or perhaps Thursday night. In the meantime, one found that despite the fact that that group did not make bay'ah, the number of people who made bay'ah was so large that Imam Ali alayhi salam was installed as Khalif and assumed his duties as Khalif. That is how his appointment went. Before I sit to consider what he did next as Khalif, there are 1 or 2 matters that I need to resolve. The first, of course, that needed consideration was the question of the youth, which I hope I have answered on political grounds. The question of the youth always has been that if, as we claim, Imam Ali alayhi salam was the legitimate successor as appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that was the purpose and purport of Ghadir. And indeed at Ghadir, all these people who subsequently became Khalif congratulated him on his appointment. Indeed, the words of Umar, who was the first, were Bakhin laka yabna Abi Talib asbahta Mawlai wa Mawlai kullul mu'minina wal mu'minat, that you have now become not only my master, but the master of all male and female believers. Then why didn't immediately upon the burial of the Holy Prophet, why didn't Imam Ali alayhi salam proceed to act as the Khalif? Because he was already appointed one. And the answer to that, I hope, has already been clear. By then, and this is why, the Saqifa was held before the burial. And this is why people opted not to attend the burial of the Holy Prophet, but concerned themselves with the question of Khilafah. So it was by then resolved as to who the Khalif should be. What was left was for Hazrat Amir to remove the sword from his sheath and shed the blood of Muslimin on purely the question of power and position. Truly, it would not have been the question of power and position. It would have been the question of proceeding with the scheme of Allah, of spreading Islam on earth as Allah wished it to be spread. But in reality, in practical terms, that was not achievable, because immediately there were groups in Medina who would not have accepted the situation. And immediately people outside, people like Muawiyah in Sham, people like Abi Waqas, people like Bashir bin Nu'man in Kufa would not have accepted the situation. Was it politically sound that all these people be allowed to gather into Medina? One set of rebels leave Medina on one day after the murder of Uthman, and another set of rebels come in? Or immediately after the burial of the Holy Prophet, a set of rebels come from outside to create chaos in Medina? And Imam Ali alayhi salam being expected to carry out that war without a stable army at all, without specific supporters, without knowing where support would be. And if Hazrat Amir alayhi salam found that he did not obtain support, would that not be the end of real Islam? Would that not be then leaving the matter in the hands of whosoever wishes to conduct Islam on a course as he thought fit? The better course was that he should be there as and when possible to guide the course of Muslims along the path taught by the Holy Prophet. And I hope it is clear as to what happened in the meetings between the Ansar and the Aus, and it became unclear as to who they would support in the circumstances. Indeed, their leader Sa'ad would have jumped out again, and he would have started a carnage of his own. But Imam Ali alayhi salam remained home for greater reasons of piety than mere political considerations of the time. Indeed, he was informed by the Holy Prophet in his lifetime that such would be the course of events. We have discussed how the Holy Prophet even warned him about what Muawiyah would do and what would happen in Siffin. Would he not have told him what exactly would happen immediately after his martyrdom? Instructions from the Holy Prophet also were that he should not take arms and he should leave the situation to remain until people come to him. What I am saying now is not something that is contained only in our books. One finds a clear public hadith narrated by the Holy Prophet publicly and is reported in a Sunni source. Ibn Maghazili, a leading Shafi, reports that the Holy Prophet said, and this report is contained in his Manaqib at page 107, that the Holy Prophet said, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله مثل علي فيكم أو قال في هذه الأمة كمثل الكعبة المستورة أو المشهورة النظر إليها عبادة والحج إليها فريضة. Fantastic words reported in this leading Sunni source from the Holy Prophet himself. He says the example of Ali is like that of the Kaaba, the holy house of Subhanallah wa ta'ala, house in which Imam Ali alayhi salam had the honor to be born. And he proceeds to say that his example to you, or he says to the Ummah, is like that of a Kaaba, whether it is open or it is hidden. An-nadharu ilayha ibadah, merely looking at the Kaaba when you are in Makkah. And what a fantastic sight when you are in Masjid al-Haram, merely to stand and look at that house of Allah. A source of inspiration by itself, without more. The Holy Prophet says merely looking at it is Kaaba, and similarly merely looking at Imam Ali alayhi salam is Kaaba. And that is a hadith that is reported by a number of companions, including Abu Bakr. During his Khilafah, at one time, Imam Ali alayhi salam was seen leaving Masjid al-Nabawi going towards his house. And Abu Bakr stopped talking to companions and kept looking at him. So companions thought that there was something amiss and asked him, why are you doing this? And he says, Wallah, I'm doing it only for one reason, that the Holy Prophet said that merely looking at Imam Ali alayhi salam is ibadah. The words are, Nadaru ila wajhi aliyin ibadah. Of course, he went further and said that this dhikr, the remembrance of Ali, as alhamdulillah we have been doing over all these evenings, is itself ibadah. The words there of the eminent hadith is, dhikru aliyin ibadah. فَإِنَّ ذِكْرُهُ ذِكْرِي وَذِكْرِي ذِكْرُ اللَّهِ وَذِكْرُ اللَّهِ ibadah. He says that the remembrance of Ali is in itself worship of Allah. People may not have been able to understand what he said. So he proceeded to elaborate, to amplify, and said, because the remembrance of Ali is my remembrance. Dhikruhu dhikri. Remembrance of Ali is remembering me, and remembering me is remembering Allah, and the remembrance of Allah is his worship. In this hadith that I am citing to you now, he says the example of Ali is that of the Kaaba. Merely looking at him is ibadah, and doing a pilgrimage to him is a farida, is wajib. Pilgrimage to Makkah is wajib. And so he was telling the ummah that when time comes, your going to Ali is obligatory on you. But just in case the ummah did not see that meaning, which to us is so apparent today, even clearer hadith follows in a leading Sunni source. Asadul Ghaba fi ma'rifati sahaba, the lion of the jungle in understanding the companions of the Prophet. And that is from a leading Sunni source, Ibn Athir, a name I have been taking since last year. And he reports it from his sources that the Holy Prophet said, Ya Ali, anta bimanzilatil Kaaba tu'ti wa la tu'ta. You are in the position of a Kaaba. Your status is like that of a Kaaba. The Kaaba does not go to anybody. People come to the Kaaba. That is how the Holy Prophet put it. You, like the Kaaba, do not go to anybody. People come to you. هؤلاء القوم فسلموها إليك. And the people salute the Kaaba, as we always do when we are there. We make salam to the Kaaba. And that is expressly what he says should be done to Imam Ali alayhi salam. And then explains, Ya'ni khilafa, meaning at the time of my succession. فَأَقْبَلَ مِنْهُمْ وَإِنْ لَمْ يَأْتُوكَ فَلَا تُؤْتِهِمْ حَتَّى يَأْتُوكَ. It is for them at the time of Khilafah to come to you. And if at that time they do not come to you, don't go to them until they come to you. And you can see the Imam Ali alayhi salam following that order to the hilt, to its letter. When the time came, he did not go to the people. He remained in the house of Fatima alayha salam, the very daughter of the Holy Prophet. He did not move from there. They may have come and tied his neck and taken him unwillingly. He did not stir the people. Indeed, when Abu Sufyan came, he said, I will not participate in any fitna with you, because Islam is the paramount consideration. Yet when the people did come to him in a manner that caused problems to him, he then accepted in keeping with the exact injunction of the Holy Prophet. And you can see that these matters are set out in leading Sunni sources. But Imam Ali alayhi salam has explained this situation And I always wanted to do this at an opportune time, and that time seems to have come, in his khutbah shaqshaqiyah, a very famous leading khutbah, very relevant to what I am saying. But I wanted to present the case fully to you, firstly on the basis of the Sunnite sources. But this khutbah of Imam Ali alayhi salam is unanimously considered as authentic in Nahjul Balagha. It's, by the way, khutbah number 3, sermon number 3 in Nahjul Balagha. I say unanimously considered as authentic because those who raise doubts about certain sermons in Nahjul Balagha claim that they were written by Sayyid Radi, Sharifur Radi wrote them, and they're not the words of Imam Ali alayhi salam. But Shaykh Mufid reported this particular khutbah in his irshad 2 or 3 centuries before Nahjul Balagha was even produced by Sharifur Radi. Before that book in its present form was compiled, 2 centuries before that, Shaykh Mufid had already reported it. And indeed, Kulaini had already reported it in exact words. And that khutbah came about because of the question Ibn Abbas put to him. Ibn Abbas put that question to him in Rahaba, and he asked him about the Caliphate and those who had preceded him. Imam Ali alayhi salam, and this khutbah you can see was immediately memorized or recorded, breathed heavily and said, by God, Ibn Abi Qahafa, that is Abu Bakr, took on its clothes, although he was aware that my position with regard to Khilafah is that of an axle to the mill. How does the mill turn or rotate without proper basis on its axis? And Imam says, although he knew that my position vis-a-vis Khilafah was that of an axle to the mill, he assumed the cloth of Khilafah. And I do not propose to read the whole khutbah, just a few passages from here, from the relevant portions. And then he says, and this is the material part in answer to the youth's question that I refer to this khutbah, so that we have his own words, so that from the horse's mouth we know exactly how and why he acted in his isma, in his wisdom bestowed on him by divine power and authority. He says, I began to consider whether I should attempt to attack when I would be like a man with a hand cut off. The Holy Prophet was gone. Or I should endure the blind darkness of oppression in which the old man would grow feeble, the young man would become white-haired, and the believer would toil until he meets his Lord. You can see the practicality of the considerations that moved Hazrat Amir alayhi salam at that given point in time. He also knew that if he did not move at that time, he would have to endure, as he calls it, the darkness of oppression, until those of his companions who were already old became too feeble to fight. And we know how old Ammar Yasir was in Siffin. Day after tomorrow, inshallah, we'll consider that aspect of his companions. We know how old Malik Ashtar was, because a long time, about 25 years passed, a completely new generation had come in. Imam Ali alayhi salam took that into account also. Having taken all that into account, he says, I realized that endurance in this was most appropriate. So I endured, while all the time there was a mote in my eye and an obstruction in my throat. He was not sitting quietly in his house, as people say, accepting the situation. He says in his own words, as he sat in his house, he sat with a mote in the eye. And you know, with that mote, how it pricks. Every time it pricks, and every time there is a twinkling of an eye, there is a prick. And you can imagine what happens when there is an obstruction in the throat. You can neither swallow it, nor can you vomit it. That is how he described his situation. And that is how his situation lasted for 25 long years. I could see my inheritance plundered. until the time of his death came to him, that is of Abu Bakr. And he handed it down to Umar, as we saw yesterday. The next sentence of Hazrat Amir in Shaqshaqiyah is revealing. He says, how amazing that while he used to offer to give it up during his life, he should make a bequest of it after his death. During his life, Abu Bakr kept saying, this is your khilafah. Yesterday I cited a small example of how Imam Hassan confronted him, and he said, yes, it is your father's place. Indeed, when he felt that he has offended Bibi Fatima alayha salam, there again he approached Imam Ali. But you can see there were specific instances to make Imam Ali alayhi salam quote them in this sermon to Ibn Abbas. He says he used to offer to give up his khilafah during his lifetime, but when the time came for him truly to give it up, he was then dying, truly to say, right, Ali will succeed me, he gives it out as by way of a bequest, although it was personal property that he could bequeath to another person. And in sheer lamentation, he then says how eagerly the two divided its udders between them. Indeed, that is how it was arranged from the first day. He then proceeds to say, by God, he, that is Abu Bakr, directed it by his bequest towards a course direction, that is Umar, whose touch was harsh, who was wounding in his roughness. And then quotes a beautiful simile. He says the man in control of it was like the rider of an obstinate camel. If you pull the reins, you would choke it. If you left the reins loose, you would cause it to go at random, so that it stumbled frequently and its excuses were few. So it was like a camel, hard to control. You pull the reins, you choke it. It can't breathe anymore. You let it loose, it goes at random. How do you control a situation like that? In the name of God, the people were afflicted with disorderliness, with refractoriness, with constant changes and with obstruction until death came to him. Yet even then, he made a consultative committee that we saw yesterday, consisting of a group among whom he claimed that I was merely one. You can imagine the status of this personality, now being treated as one of the six. And how painful that must have been to him. Because here is a man of knowledge, piety, learning, excellence, far, far beyond Abdurrahman bin Rauf or Uthman, and this is acknowledged by consensus. And yet he is put at par with them, indeed subsequently to be rejected. And the whole scheme was that he should be rejected. And a doubt stirred up against me through being put alongside the leading members among them, so that I now came to be regarded merely as an equal with these men as my equals. After a few sentences he proceeds to say, one man of the group inclined against me because of his jealousy. And this appears to have been directed at Sa'ad bin Abu Waqqas. Another man, Abdurrahman bin Auf, favored his brother-in-law Uthman, as we saw yesterday, their relationship, for other reasons which I will not mention. Eventually, the third person, this is now Uthman, among these people arose, lifting his chest. The Umayyads rushed to devour the treasury of God like the camel devours spring vegetation until its stomach is satiated by it. And that was the main complaint against Uthman, that he had gathered the Umayyads who were plundering the treasury to satisfy their own greed. The action of the people which shocked was that they came as messengers to me. This is when they were calling upon him to accept the Khilafah. He says, and I did promise that I will read his words to you on this particular issue. The actions of the people which shocked was that they came as messengers to me like waves of hyenas, asking me that I should give them my acceptance of the pledge of allegiance, accepting their bay'ah. They were crowding in on me so that my two sons, Al-Hassan and Al-Hussein, would have been trampled underfoot and my two shoulders pulled apart. Yet when I undertook the affairs of the Khilafah, a group broke their oath of allegiance, as we will see day after tomorrow. Another deviated from the truth, and others acted wickedly. And he completes that portion of the sermon by saying, by him who split the seed and created man, if it was not the presence of those present, and we have just discussed who they were, and the necessity of the Hujjatullah, of Hujjah of Allah to man through the existence of such supporters, and the fact that God does not give the true possessors of authority the authority without them being resigned by the overfull bellies of the wrongdoers, while the oppressed starve for their rights, I would have thrown down the reins of Khilafah onto its withers, and I would swallow the last with the cup of its beginning. Then in my view they would find their world scantier than the snot from the nose. Indeed, even today, isn't the Muslim Ummah experiencing exactly that state of affairs that Imam warned centuries ago in Shakshaki? You can see how he felt totally obliged. He felt he was succumbed to circumstances in which he had no other option in respect of those who were present and in respect of the need of the Hujjatullah to assume office at that particular time. So much said, a messenger comes with the letter. The Imam alayhi salam reads the letter, gives him a reply. Ibn Abbas says, please proceed and tell us more about that situation, that historical aspect from your lips. He says, it was like foam from the mouth of a camel, as it opens its mouth to bellow and then remains silent. That process is called Shakshaqiyah, and hence the khutbah is named after it. But at least we have been able to obtain from him through this khutbah the true situation which led him to the action he took. And therefore, with those words, I wish to wind up our discussions on Imam Ali's biography up to the time of Khilafah, and then from Wednesday inshallah we start to discuss his Khilafah, how he met the situations in Jamal, in Siffin, in Naharawan, how he ordered law and order. In fact, only today I met an elder of the Bombay community who tells me that he heard, he was not present, my mentioning the letter that he wrote to Malik Ashtar, which we will discuss in its broad lines inshallah, to show the administration that he set out. And this elderly person tells me that they took the opportunity of sending it to Indira Gandhi, and when Indira Gandhi read that letter to Malik Ashtar, she immediately that day sent a reply saying, I never knew there was democracy in Islam 14 centuries ago. That is the purport of his, the way in which he outlined the system of government that would prevail under him. And we will also discuss the position of Kharajites. Inshallah, we will discuss matters respecting his knowledge and his piety and the course that he was leading for the Muslim Commonwealth. But for the time being, I would like that the youths part with this subject with the total conviction that the immediate successor to the Holy Prophet could only have been Imam Ali salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. I will very briskly set out to you the main reason, and then 14 subsidiary reasons, because the main reason which we ascribe to, other Muslims perhaps do not. But I do not see why they should not, because the reasons we ascribe to are all from the Holy Book. Our reason is that only Allah appoints a successor, I have mentioned twice already. Today I wish to give the full reference of the ayah of Quran in respect of this matter, and it is in chapter 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 30, where Allah says, Allahu a'lamu haytha yaj'alu risalatah. Allah knows best where to place His authority, His messengerhood, and the imamah that follows after that. Any authority which is divine authority, only Allah can decide where it should be, and not man. Well, and we have seen how circumstances changed when man was to do it. At first, it is one companion pulling the hand of the other and making a bay'ah, and the appointment is done. Second time, a will is written as though it is a bequest, and an appointment is made. Third time, a consultative committee is lodged. Fourth time, the people go and trample on a companion and say, you are now our Khalifa. The fifth time, power prevails and might becomes right, the way Muawiyah did it. And since then it remained so through the Umayyads and the Abbasides. Could that, by logic, have been the scheme that Allah made for the Muslim Ummah? For the Ummah of one whom He sent as the most perfect of His prophets? But another ayah of Quran on this particular point is ayah 7:142, which I have had occasion once to recite to you when Nabi Musa was going on Koh-e-Tur, on the mountain, to have his conversation with Subhanallah wa ta'ala. He also appointed a Khalifa, and he appointed a Khalifa on the command of Allah. وَوَعَدْنَا مُوسَى 30 لَيْلَةً وَأَتْمَمْنَاهَا بِعَشْرٍ. Musa had made an appointment for 30 nights. Allah's appointment was for 30 nights. But then 10 more nights were added. وَأَتْمَمْنَاهَا بِعَشْرٍ فَتَمَّ مِيقَاتُ رَبِّهِ 40 لَيْلَةً. And hence his meeting with the Lord was for 40 nights. Even in that sphere of time, he appointed a successor to look after his affairs. فَقَالَ مُوسَى لِأَخِيهِ هَارُونَ اخْلُفْنِي فِي قَوْمِي. Oh my brother Harun, you represent me, you be my successor whilst I am away. وَأَصْلِحْ وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ سَبِيلَ الْمُفْسِدِينَ. But insofar as Hazrat Musa is concerned, the ayah in Surah Taha, chapter 20, verses 25 to 30, make the situation even clearer, even clearer. There he says, in that particular surah, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa ahlil uqdatam min lisani. He says, oh Allah, spread my breast, wa yassir amri, and make easy my task, and this knot that I have in my tongue, clear it. Yafqahu qawli, so that they can understand my speech. Waj'al li waziratan min ahli Haruna akhi. And you appoint, he couldn't have appointed himself, you appoint from my family a wazir, a minister for me. Even that Musa could not have done himself. He sought leave of Allah and he told Allah, you appoint him from my family. That is the prophetic sunnah, that successes come from the family. Haruna akhi, my brother Harun. Clear provision that appointment comes from Allah. Indeed, when he started this practice of khilafah, when Allah commenced this sunnah, he made it very clear that the right to appoint a khalifa is only his. وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةُ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. Remember, the Holy Prophet is told, remember the time when I spoke to the angels. Your Lord spoke to the angels and said, I intend to appoint a khalifa on the earth. And you can see that the appointment is exclusively his. I appoint a khalifa on the earth. And they said, قالوا أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء. Will you appoint someone who will cause bloodshed on earth, who will cause dissension on earth? The angels knew us too well, didn't they? Even before we came to earth, they knew too well what we would do on earth. And they complained to Allah that, oh Allah, will you send that kind of Khalifa whom you are out now to create, who will create dissension? وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ. Whilst we praise you and we glorify you, we extol you. The answer that Allah gave to them, and I do not wish to discuss that incident at length, because I think I have done so in 1997. But the answer is so befitting here to explain the purport of Allah appointing. He said, Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamu. What I know, you do not know. And hence, even angels were unfit to be khalifas or to be appointed khalifas. What to talk of sinners on earth appointing each other as khalifas? It would be inconceivable, Islamically. But even if we were to leave those theological arguments aside, then from the practical angle, from the angle of reason and logic alone, wouldn't the youth see that what we say is logically correct? And I wish to put forward 14 arguments to you, which I have already provided evidence for, so that it is for you now to choose just one of them. Because if I am right on one out of those 14, the option becomes inevitable, irresistible. To say that what happened at Saqifa, this is my first argument, must imply that Allah had not appointed anybody. If Allah did appoint someone, if Ghadir did take place, and yet you hold a Saqifa, that is sheer disobedience of the Holy Prophet and his Allah. That is sheer disobedience. So if there was no disobedience, because you are now appointing a Khalif, and you do not expect he would be a disobedience to Allah in that way, then the conclusion, the inference must be that Allah did not appoint anybody. Not only that the Holy Prophet did not appoint anybody, but that would also be wholly illogical. That would also be wholly illogical, because the Holy Prophet did in his lifetime show that when need be, he appointed a successor immediately. He left Makkah and appointed a person to look after the affairs. He did not go to Muta, and he, as we discussed last year, he appointed one person and said, if in that battle he is killed, as he was, appoint Ja'far, and if he is killed, appoint a third person. He made provision for 3 captains, one after the other, to succeed one after the other, should that eventuality arise. And the fact that he was dying was very well known, not only to him, but to the whole ummah. Would he, in those circumstances, not have made provision for a successor? What does your logic, your mind tell you? And he was the kind of person who, as we know, not only had spread Islam, had also set up embassies, had received foreign delegations, and had sprinkled the wings of Islam far and wide. But then, secondly, Tabuk. How many instances did I give you of reported cases when he said to Imam Ali alayhi salam, Takunu minni bimanzilati Haruna min Musa. A manzila, a status we just discussed from the Holy Book itself. Thirdly, if we are to appoint a successor in a divine office, that was an apostolic office, and so it is considered till today. Nobody says that office was less than apostolic. Indeed, when Umar addressed Abu Bakr, he always addressed him as the Khalif of the Messenger of Allah. That is how they came to be addressed, one after the other. So if it was an apostolic office, who do you appoint? Do you appoint a person born and bred in idolatry? Or do you appoint one born in the house of Allah who never bowed to an idol all his life? Is there a question of an option there? And next argument I wish to put to you is this. Do you appoint a person who continued to be brought up in idolatry until he converted, or do you appoint someone who was brought up by the Holy Prophet? Indeed, when born would not take the mother's milk, the Holy Prophet gave him his saliva. The Holy Prophet chewed food and put into his mouth. This is how Ali was reared, and then taught him knowledge after knowledge. Yesterday we discussed the situation how in Taif he gave him so much knowledge that Imam Ali said he has opened 1,000 doors, each door opening 1,000 other doors of knowledge. And this exercise was repeated immediately after his death. The meaning there is very clear, that he wanted him to be the successor, and that is why he was briefing him so fully and so thoroughly. Other companions did arrive at the house, but you heard how they were sent away. An argument was put forward at the Saqifa that the Muhajirun were people who became Muslims before the Ansar, and hence a Muhajir should be the successor. Well then, the abundant proof is that Hazrat Amir was the first of the Muslims. By all standards, he was the first of the Muslims indeed, the first to pray behind the Holy Prophet in the way we pray today, 7 years even before the public proclamation of Islam. And then the irresistible argument flows. The irresistible argument flows from Da'wat Zil Ashira. The Prophet said, whoever agrees to help me now will be my successor. 40 people were present. Will Muslims be prepared, nastajiru billah, na'udhan billah, to belie their Prophet? Even if some are the youths of this community prepared to do so? That was the situation then. But it is well known, leaving all those ahadith aside, you as a man of the world know that a person who settles debt is a successor. When a person leaves this earth, his debts are settled by his successor, who settled the debts of the Holy Prophet at every step. When the Holy Prophet was leaving Makkah for Medina, the debts were settled only by Imam Ali alayhi salam. Indeed, the hadith that I cited to you, Imam Ali was clearly told that you will be the person who will be Qadi Daini, you will be the one who will settle my debts. And indeed, after the martyrdom of the Holy Prophet, debts were settled by Imam Ali alayhi salam. Even when people, creditors, one or two, went to Abu Bakr, he sent them to Imam Ali, who settled the debts. Isn't that proof enough from purely worldly angle? And there is indeed specific authority on that in Manaqib, as reported by Khawarizmi. He says, he mentions the previous hadith which we've already dealt with, and then he says, Allah innahu laysa ba'di nabi, there is no nabi after me, innahu la yanbaghi an adhaba illa wa anta khalifati. Clear words by the Holy Prophet that you will be Khalifa after me. And one finds these words in Kifayatul Matalib also. And indeed, in another leading book, those words are repeated, on respect of which I will not take your time. But perhaps by now I am entitled to tell you what Sheikh Tusi says on this point. He also sets out the kind of arguments that I am putting forward, and then says that Imam Ali was the legitimate Khalifa because the Holy Prophet said, Sallimu alayh bi imratil mu'minin. Salute Ali by calling him Amir al-Mu'minin. That title by which we know him today was not given to him by the people of Medina. It was bestowed on him by the Holy Prophet himself. It was bestowed exclusively on Imam Ali alayhi salam by the Holy Prophet himself. He said, Sallimu alayh, greet him, bi imratil mu'minin, by calling him Amir al-Mu'minin. Isma'u lahu, listen to him, wa ati'u, and follow him, obey him. Isn't that more than ample that one needs to know who the successor would be? Ta'allamu minhu wa la ta'lamuhu. Learn from him and don't dare to teach him. That is the status to which he was, clearly implying exactly what his role would be. And my ninth argument, apart from the theological one, is that he was the kinsman of the Holy Prophet. I say this because that was the argument advanced all through. It was the argument that was the leading argument in Saqifa. And for that, what better argument you want than his words, Aliyyum minni wa ana minhu. He appointed Imam Ali, his brother, on 2 occasions in his lifetime and continuously kept calling him as akhi, as a brother. And Imam Ali claimed even after the Holy Prophet that he was a brother. Whom will you select to be a successor of the Prophet? A companion of ordinary merit? Or will you choose a companion about whom the Holy Prophet should say that he is imanu kullu, that he is the very embodiment of faith? If he moves, the entire faith is moving with him. Hence did he say once, Haqqu ma'al Ali wal Ali ma'al haqq. Ali is with haqq, with righteousness and the right itself. And right is also with Imam Ali. You cannot have more express words than that. You cannot have more express words for a person than the words that Allah loves him. He loves Allah. Yuhibbullah wa rasulahu wa yuhibbahullah wa rasulah. What more significant words can we have than that? What more can we need than the ornament, decoration from Allah, that when the surah of renunciation, Surah Al-Barat, comes, Allah should order that this surah should be delivered, oh my Prophet, either by you personally or by Ali, no third person. Is there a choice left? Is there a choice left then? And when Mubahala came, and the question arose of anfusana wa anfusakum, then the argument became clear that Imam Ali alone was taken to constitute the personality of the Holy Prophet, clearly showing that if the Holy Prophet is not there, then the one who can replace him is only Ali. That is a proof of succession by itself. And finally, 14 additional grounds that I wanted to give you. Finally, when the time came to bury him, who was there to bury him but Imam Ali alayhi salam? And isn't that proof? Isn't that proof of succession in our theology? He was the person who was called by the Holy Prophet to be there at the last minute and to take his last words. He is the person who gave him the final wash. He is the person who was the first to pray on him, and he was the person who buried him, and buried him in what circumstances? Circumstances in which the Khilafah to which he was appointed was, to use his own words, was being plundered by other people. Hence, I hope that question is resolved beyond doubt in the minds of youths, whatever whisperings are introduced into their ears. I say this because the scheme that those who have invited me hope to proceed with is that the biographies of all the Imams be discussed, particularly those that are not discussed very frequently in the years to come. At each stage the question of succession becomes relevant, and hence if we have covered it in this year, we will not need to resort to it except to establish the proof of the appointment of one by his immediate predecessor. That is the way in which the Holy Prophet tuned his family, that they should be able to look after the affairs of the Ummah, to protect the Ummah, guard the Ummah at all times, so that the governance of the Ummah is according to the will of Allah. so that the Muslim is able to elevate his spiritual level to one at which he is in proximity of Allah. And one finds that the household of the Prophet performed this particular task in its excellence, at its peak. One finds that just as in Mubahala, when the Christians challenged Islam, the Holy Prophet took his closest dear and near ones with him, took his dearest daughter, took his dearest brother, took his dearest grandsons, whom he used to call his sons, together with him, so that the sacrifice that would be necessary to be made would be made by his immediate kith and kin. So did Hussein alayhi salam when the time arose when Muslims themselves, in the embodiment of Yazid, were out to destroy Islam. When that attack came on Islam, likewise Imam Hussein alayhi salam decided that just as my grandfather did, so will I. In this deputation of mine, I will take those kith and kin of mine who are dearest to me, including Shahzada Ali Akbar, of whom we mentioned yesterday, the replica of the Holy Prophet, including Abbas to represent his father Ali alayhi salam. But when we talk of the nearest and dearest to him, he did not even leave behind his 6-month-old child. Indeed, at that point of time, just as he was leaving Medina on the 28th of Rajab, Shahzada Ali Asghar was just recently born. Hence, dearest to him, that's recently given gift by Allah. And one can see the level of Shahzada Ali Asghar when the Imam alayhi salam left Medina. It is said that his daughter Sughra, who was being left behind, took Shahzada Ali Asghar in her laps to say goodbye to him. Shahzada Ali Asghar would not leave the laps because Sughra was showing so much love and affection to that child. Ultimately, when Imam Hussein was told this, he comes and whispers something in the ears of Shahzada Ali Asghar, and immediately Shahzada Ali Asghar leaps out of the laps of Sughra into the laps of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And Imam Hussein alayhi salam hands him over to Rabab, saying, we will carry him too to Karbala because we will need him there. Subsequently when asked what he whispered into the ears of Asghar, he said, all I asked him was that, oh Asghar, have you changed your mind about your sacrifice in Karbala? You can imagine a just born child in that household being asked that question, and immediately that question is asked, he leaps from the laps of his sister, knowing the time has now arrived. And so did he act again in Karbala itself. Imam Hussein alayhi salam reached a stage at which he now had no companions with him, and all his kith and kin had also already been sacrificed. He was, as it is said, wahidan farida. He was absolutely lonely on that battlefield, and in that condition he makes his istighatha. Hal min nasirin yansuruna. Is there any helper who would extend his help to us at this time? And suddenly Imam Hussein alayhi salam hears wailing and weeping in his tents. And when he hears that, he becomes disturbed. He immediately turns. He turns and goes back to his khayma. When he gets there, he asks Bibi Zainab alayhi salam, oh Zainab, what is this weeping all about? It has disturbed my activities on the battlefield. And Bibi Zainab says, oh Hussein, what can I tell you? When we all heard that istighatha of yours, Asghar has thrown himself out of the cradle. He's crying and he's totally helpless. He cannot be controlled anymore. And Imam Hussein takes Asghar in his hands and says, Asghar, you have rightly known the time appointed for you. You have called me back rightly at the time that is Allah has appointed for you. Indeed, you will be a mujahid. And says to his mother, Rabab, give leave to us now. Oh Rabab, I will take him. He also wants to fight. And Rabab says, oh my master, if this little 6-month child wants to fight, let him dress him as a warrior. Let him so clothe him that they also know that this is yet another warrior from the army of Hussein. And Imam Hussein says, what dress will you give him? She says, hold on, my master. Dresses her Asghara. She says she will put a small sword on his waist so that he can fight with it. We said to him, Rabab, oh Rabab, Asghar does not read a sword. His lips and his tongue will be his sword. When he was brought to the battlefield, a time arose when the Imam said to the people, if you do not want to give me water, that is your wish. What wrong has this little child, this 6-month little child done? And if you do not trust me, I will leave him on this hot ground so that you can come and give him a drop of water yourselves. And at that time, the Imam alayhi salam says to Asghar, Asghar, you wanted to fight. This is your time for your battle. And Hamid ibn Muslim says, Asghar takes out his dry tongue, spreads it on his dry lips. And when that 6-month child does that, even the kuffars, even the people in the army of Yazid started weeping and crying and started telling Umar, oh Umar, this 6-month child has done no wrong. Give him some water. We cannot bear to see those dry lips and the dry tongue. Umar, on the other hand, says to Harmala, oh Harmala, iqta kalam al-Hussein. Harmala, destroy that word of Hussein. And Harmala then takes out his 3-pronged arrow. You would ask, Harmala, wasn't a 1-pronged arrow sufficient for that little neck? But a time comes when that arrow moves from ear to ear. But 3 arrows were missed. Umar subsequently asked Hurmala, Hurmala, you are so accurate in your aim. Why did you miss the 3 arrows? He said, every time I aimed at the child, I found a lady at the entrance of the gate. I knew that lady was but the mother of Asghar, wanting to know if that 6-month-old child is receiving the water at the hands of Muslims or not. What did happen when ultimately that body of Asghar was put into the hands of Rabab? She receives the child, sees the child with the arrow in his back and says, Amithluka Sanaharu, Asghar, do they kill even little children like you with this? ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رحم الله من يقرأ الفاتحة.